What is up, guys? It's Eric again with the Film Photography channel, and today let's take a look at the Mamiya M645 1000S. Okay, so what we have here, as I just said, is the Mamiya M645 1000S. It's a beautiful medium format film camera, and this is a film SLR. Some of the highlights of this camera, just as a medium format camera, is that you get a larger negative than you would with say a 35 mil, film camera, which is equivalent to today's full frame. So this gives you about a 2.6 times larger negative than what you would get from a 35 millimeter film frame. Mamiya deployed a new shutter with this camera. They called it the moving coil electronic shutter, and as the name denotes, you need a battery for the shutter to work. So there's no manual shutter available in this camera from what I've seen. It's the viewfinder in this camera is just incredible. I mean, it's a really, really bright viewfinder. Even indoors, I mean, it just lights up really well when you're looking through here. Now, this camera has interchangeable finders. What I've got on here right now is the PD prism finder, which has a meter built into it. Now, the camera itself, although it needs a battery, and I'll show you the batteries right here, although it needs a battery to work the shutter, the same battery actually runs the light meter, on the camera. Now, Mamiya, in their literature, they kind of brag a little bit about how little power the shutter consumes, and they mentioned that regardless of what shutter speed you're using, it uses the same amount of power, and you can expect the battery to last a long time. I've had this camera only a few months, maybe about 4 months, and it's the original battery. I haven't used this camera all that much, but the few times I've been out with it, I've really, really enjoyed it. So back to the prism finder. The PD finder has LEDs inside when you're looking through there to help you determine correct exposure. There's another prism finder that also has a meter, and that actually has a needle instead of the ultra modern LEDs like this bad boy has. Okay, first off, you see just the beautiful fit and finish, and the nice lines on this camera. The camera's not really heavy, but this type of camera certainly is not light. All right, so the film advances with a single rotation of the film advance lever here. And one thing I really like about this camera, and what kind of drew me to this particular model, is that there's two shutter releases. You got your standard shutter release here, okay, and then you've got a second shutter release right here. And I'm going to show you in a second why it's so nice to have this. This button takes an exposure reading, which is kind of a nice way to have this set up, because what doesn't happen is your meter isn't constantly reading, which could go a long way towards wearing your battery out prematurely. So it's kind of nice that this button is just kind of, it's kind of just takes a reading and then allows you, I think it's 15 seconds before it'll turn itself off. You have a series of LED lines on the right side of the viewfinder, and what happens there is the it just indicates over and under exposure. And you have a green line, and these are like little horizontal lines on the right side. Sometimes you'll see like a little dot in these cameras, a little round LED. In this case, it's just a little horizontal LED. For some reason, they just made it a little bit different. When you're using the PDS prism finder, you want to make sure that you have the shutter speed control that's affixed to the body set to that orange dot, so this shutter speed control can work, and you can actually use the meter in here. Okay, this is simply your ASA control. It goes from 25 to 6400. This is where you set your film speed setting. You do have a flash hot shoe here, and never used a flash with this, and it looks like it's just your basic hot shoe. It just sets the flash off. It doesn't have TTL or anything like that. Film advance lever is removable. You just counter rotate it backwards there and hit the button at the bottom. It pops right off. This allows you to attach the power winder attachment if you want to do that. And I also saw there's like a folding manual film advance lever. Like as you can see, this one's got a fixed handle on it. So this camera's got interchangeable focusing screens. I've currently got the split diagonal in this particular one. The screen is held in place by this black frame. You see the two screws there? They're connected to the, they're screwed into the black frame. And so if you buy an alternate screen, what you do is you just take the screen out of the frame and then you replace only the screen. You don't actually get a frame as well when you purchase an alternate. This is your release for the finder, and I'll show you how that works in just a second. And this red button here is just your battery check. If you see when you press the red button, you get the green light there. All right. The neck strap on this camera is kind of interesting. It's I'm not sure what you call this kind of mount here, but I like it a lot. It's really easy to take off and put back on. You see that? You just press this back here and it jumps right on there. And it's a really solid connection. And it's good to have this quick release because this camera can potentially be on a tripod, a lot. So it's kind of nice to have something that you don't have to like thread in and out. You can just pop it right off of there. All right, so this lever right here, which has the cap missing off of it. Normally there should be a little black cap on there, but this lever gives you the multi-exposure capability. Okay, and you may notice that it's set on multi, right? And why is that? And I'll tell you why I've got it set on multi right now is because this camera doesn't have any film in it, and I want to be able to show you how it works. And when it doesn't have film in it, you have to set it to multi for the shutter to go off for some reason. That's just how it's made. I'm not sure why that is. Well, I guess the film has something that releases the, releases the shutter mechanism. I'll show you what it sounds like without the mirror lockup. Yeah, and you kind of feel like a little vibration. It's not terrible. It's actually pretty well dampened, but there is a vibration there when the mirror is not locked up, and that's probably something that'll only really come into play for really slow shutter speeds if it's sitting on a tripod and it's kind of doing a really slow shutter speed. You probably get some shake if you don't lock the mirror up. So it's a good idea to do that. Okay. The lenses are absolutely gorgeous. I wouldn't have picked this up if it didn't have great glass, and it definitely does. So keep that in mind. This is the poor man's Hasselblad 500 series in a big way, because you get I'll say 80% of what the Hasselblad can give you. Great optics. Not quite Hasselblad optics, but great optics nonetheless. Super sharp photos from this. You'll probably have to hold them up to a magnifying glass to tell the difference between the photos that come out of here and your Hasselblads. And also, a lot of the Hasselblads didn't even have 1/1000th of a second shutter speed, so that's kind of a nice bonus. And again, the price is just way less than the Hasselblad's cost. Okay, so film counter right here, it resets itself, which is a nice little bonus. Your FP and X sync PC slots right here. There's a little cover on them right now. And I mentioned earlier, this is the shutter speed, the shutter speed control dial that's built into the body, and a self timer down here at the base of the camera. And it gives you a actually the switch is here. It gives you I didn't wind it all the way, but it gives you like a 10-second or so delay. So, and that's good to use if you don't have a cable release, or obviously if you want to take your own photo, join the group to take a photo. All right, so to remove the film or to load the film, remove the film, whatever, you have to push this panel in right here. This is where you normally would keep like the end of the film box to kind of remind you what film you're using. Okay, so what you do is you push this in first, and then you slide this little button there, and then the back pops right open. Now as far as I can tell, this camera is really good in terms of not having light leaks. I haven't read any horror stories about light leaks, and this door, as you can see it, as I can see when I open it up, there's no foam around it, which tells me it doesn't need any foam, which means there's no foam to wear out, which means there should not be any light leaks. In any case, now one big difference between this and the Hasselblad, and the reason that I called it 80% is good, is because the Hasselblad has these completely self-contained film backs, which require like a dark slide that slides in here, and it blocks the film from being exposed to light as you remove the the back, and you can, the whole premise is that you can have several film backs kind of at the ready. You can have 2 or 3 or 4 different types of film ready to go, which it also means you can change mid-roll if you want to change from I don't know, from slide film to negative, or from color to black and white. You're kind of ready to do that. That's never come up to be honest. It's never come up with me. I shoot a roll and I keep moving. By the way, you get 15 frames from a roll of 120, 30 frames from a roll of 220 if you can find it. 220 is not really around anymore. You can find it on eBay. It'll be old and expired, and you get what you get. But in any case, this is the 120 roll. As you can see, it's marked right here. It would say 220 if it was that. You press these 2 buttons there, and it releases. Really nicely engineered. Feels great. Very, very solid. When it goes in there, there's no play at all. But anyway, you do that, and I'm gonna show you how to roll a spool of film onto here in a second. All right, so you see the cloth curtain shutter in there. You can kind of see it opening up. That's kind of neat. It's a big curtain, so it's a little bit loud compared to like a 35mm SLR. It's a little loud. The viewfinder is gorgeous on this camera. It's got 94% viewfinder coverage, and it's nice and bright. It's really easy to focus. Now, let's talk about these finders a little bit. Okay, this particular finder is useful when you want to use this camera as you do like a normal SLR. When you want to hold it up to your face, hold it like this and focus it and take the photo and so forth. It's usable like this. Now, there's a grip available that would go here. It's a pretty common accessory for this format camera. Not just this camera, but all of them. There's a grip that actually has a motor drive built in that'll turn this knob, automatically when you take the photo. For 15 photos, I don't think I'm trying to take, 2 or 3 frames per second, whatever it is, because you'll blow through a roll pretty quickly. And this just isn't that type of camera. I'm sure there is a time where that winder would, be appropriate, but I just haven't really had the desire to get one. And they're actually really cheap too. I think they're like $40 or something like that. I just don't see the need for it. Obviously, the advantage is, besides having the grip, you can keep your eye on the viewfinder as the film winds. So I'm sure that's useful. Who knows? I may end up getting one. Okay, but like I mentioned earlier, interchangeable viewfinders. This is the PD Prism Finder. Now, this little button here, it pushes in and rotates to the right, and that releases the finder. Okay, so we'll put this one to the side and take a look there. Really nice glass, and again, it's all gorgeous fit and finish. Nice metal construction. There's no lack of quality in this camera whatsoever. I mean, these cameras get compared to Hasselblads, which are the ultimate in terms of quality, but I don't know. You'd probably have to pick up a Hasselblad and hold it next to this to see any difference, because this is a really well-made camera. Okay, so this guy here, this is the waist level viewfinder, okay, and it goes on here really easily. Just kind of press it on there. It also has the same little release knob that you just saw on the other, on the Prism Finder. It just pops up really easily, and to fold it down, you just kind of squeeze both sides here, and it folds down quite readily, no problem. It also, of course, has the requisite magnifier in here, that just the pop-up magnifier. You see that? And it just, allows you to get critical focusing. You put your eye nice and close there. And I have to mention again, like even with this finder, the focusing screen is just, it's just phenomenally bright. I mean, I'm indoors. This is a 2.8 lens, and I mean, it's just nice and bright. The focusing circle in the middle on this particular lens, being a 2.8, and being that it is a little dim in here, they tend to black out a little bit. But the screen is so big that it really makes it easy to focus even without the diagonal split focusing line. Okay, and I mentioned the second shutter release earlier. Now, this is one of the reasons I really like this camera. I haven't run across another one that has this shutter release located here. And the advantage of that is, as you can see, as I'm using it like this, it's just really natural to have my thumb right here, and to release the shutter. So when you put this viewfinder on, you have to remember, first thing to do right away, remember to rotate this knob back to this its normal shutter speed range, the 1/1000th down to 8 seconds and bulb. Yeah. Now this orange circle kind of serves another purpose. I don't know if it's by design, but you can actually use it as a T mode. Your T stands for timed. You can press the shutter, and of course it would be on a tripod. And a lot of cameras are like this. In the film age, you rotate this knob to release the shutter. And typically what you do is you'll cover the lens. Okay, if you're taking like a 5-minute exposure, you'll cover the lens so you don't get any shake. So you put your hand over the lens, put a lens cap on it or what have you, and then rotate it away, and it'll release the shutter. But normal usage, you just set your shutter speed here. Now you lose the metering. Okay, there's no metering in this case. Sunny 16 works fine, especially with color negative or black and white negative film. You've got a lot of latitude there. Sunny 16 is just fine. You take your film box speed as your shutter speed, and then you set your aperture to 16, and then you're going to get a good exposure, for a sunny day. And then you look up the Sunny 16 rule. It works. And there's times that I found it really, really useful instead of using a meter, because in high contrast situations, meters can get fooled, and you can't fool the Sunny 16 rule. Okay. All right. So moving on. All right. So again, back to the waist level viewfinder. No batteries needed. Still need the battery, obviously, for the electronic shutter, but it's just a really fun way to use this camera. As you can see, the shutter. The second shutter release being right here, it just makes it really natural and really easy when you're looking through here, especially in the close-up mode here. You see where your thumb just falls right in place, and you're ready to take the picture. And you even have like a nice grip on the camera, so you can kind of have like help hold it really steady. I mean, look at the grip. I've got my right hand here. I got my left hand under the lens, and my thumb just falls right in place. So I really, really like using this camera with this finder more so than with the prism finder. The detractors from this particular finder is that everything, and you probably know this, everything is backwards. Image, like a mirror image, let's call it. So when I move one direction, the camera or the scene is going in the other direction. And that's not a big deal, except for like aligning a horizon. Because if I'm going this way, the horizon's going the other way. So that takes a little getting used to. And once you're out there for a little while using it, it's not a big deal. You kind of get used to it. But I did take a bunch of photos that the horizon was just off on every photo, and I didn't really realize what I was doing until I looked at the developed roll. Okay, so in any case, I think I've covered all the bells and whistles. Depth of field preview lever right here. I think I missed that. The prism finder is really handy to use. I mean, as you go to meter, and again, just you know, to remind you, just make sure that this is on the orange dot, the meter that's built into the shutter speed dial that's built into the camera, and then the meter is coupled to this shutter speed dial here. Okay, so it's pretty simple, and if you look, everything kind of falls in place. As you're looking through here, you just hit the meter button, and you got 15 seconds to kind of figure out your exposure, and you know, it's just as simple as that. I've got a green line in the middle if I want to overexpose or underexpose. It's very simple, and I'm ready to go, and I just hit the shutter release, and it's just that easy. As you're looking through this viewfinder, it's just big, it's bright. Even indoors, this is a relatively dimly lit room, even though it may look a little bright on the video. It's you know, it's not that bright in here, and it's very, very fun and easy viewfinder to use. The camera gets out of your way. You set it's a manual exposure camera. There's no automatic modes. This lens has an A on it, an A and an M setting on it, and okay, yeah, the A and the M setting, oddly enough, gives you a depth of, it stops the aperture blades down. When it's set on manual, and you rotate the aperture ring, the lens gets dark as you go to your, you know, smaller apertures, and that's under the manual mode. When you rotate and here you can see this, when you rotate this slide here, you see the manual and the auto there. Okay, so under the auto mode, it works like a normal SLR lens. The aperture stays open as you're viewing through the lens, and then it closes down at the time you take the picture. When it's set on manual mode, you get like a constant depth of field preview. Even though there is a depth of field preview lever here, you still, when you're using it in manual mode, and there, you know, that there may be some good use for that. There were a variety of lenses available for this, to include some really nice wide angles like this 45 millimeters, like I want to say like a 21 millimeter on 35 mil, or sorry, 24 millimeter on a 35 mil. But there were also telephoto lenses. Now, if you're using this type of viewfinder, sometimes it's just easier, or you know, for faster shooting. When you're set at infinity anyway, you don't really need to, you know, figure out focusing. There was a what they called an auxiliary mask. It was this kind of a bracket that fit over this and kind of rested here. And you pop it open. There was a little screen at the end of it. But anyway, what you got was just like a quick viewfinder that, you know, you can kind of. It was almost like a rangefinder, because you're not at all looking through the lens. It's not at all looking through the lens. You're looking through the viewfinder. So it makes it a lot easier if you're, I don't know, maybe trying to spot a bird or something, and you've got a strong telephoto lens on there. It makes it really easy to just kind of, it's almost like aiming a rifle. That's the type of viewfinder. There's other cameras, even the modern Nikons have an accessory like that for the really strong telephoto lenses that are just like a finder sight on a rifle, and you just kind of line up your picture that way. On this film cartridge insert, you'll notice that this particular one has it's like a paper sleeve on here, and what this does, believe it or not, this paper sleeve actually has a function. What this does, if this particular cartridge with this, you know, paper sleeve is inserted, then you can release the shutter on this camera without actually having film in here. If you want to release the shutter just to test it, or just to, you know, see how it sounds or whatever, you can do that if you set the camera to the multi-exposure mode by rotating this knob here. You know, that's when there's no film in there. You put it on multi, you know, down here, and then you can release the shutter at will, and it'll go off as you need it to. If there is no film in here and this is not set on multi, then the shutter release won't go off. Don't think there's something wrong with the camera. It's designed that way. this sleeve right here will allow you to release the shutter when there's no film in there, but this sleeve is actually inserted in there. I guess it fools the camera into thinking there's film in there. Okay, and I'm not gonna do it here because I just put a nice fresh roll of film in it, but once you've taken your 15th frame, you know, given that this is a 120 roll, you get 15 shots. Once the shutter release will lock up. Again, there's nothing wrong with the camera. That's just what it does. You know, again, when you're in the normal mode, not in the multi-exposure mode. So you finish your last frame, and then your shutter can't release the shutter, and that's kind of letting you know, hey, this roll is done. So at that point, you just continue to wind, kind of like when I was initially loading the film. You just continue to wind until your film is completely wound until the onto the take-up spool. You know, if you're familiar with 120, there's like a little adhesive strip that will hold your will hold your film secure. Just one little tip with 120 film: be really careful when you take it out of the camera, because if it unwinds on you, because remember, it's not in a cartridge, it's roll film, so it's on an exposed roll. So on 120 film in particular, I've had at least one time where I kind of lost the grip on it, and it kind of got a little bit loose, and you get light contamination, like these leaks around the edge of the frame. They were actually kind of severe on the first few frames, or on the last few frames. So yeah, just kind of, if my tip to everybody is, if you don't need to, if you're like, let's say you're on your second roll, or if you only took one roll, just leave it in there till you get home and you're ready to actually develop it, and then you can more carefully remove it, because sometimes when you're out there in the field, you're a little more wound up, and you're walking and your heart's beating, and you might miss these little intricate things that you're doing here with the film. It's much easier when you're home and you're relaxed and ready to go. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Don't ever let that 120 spool get loose, because you're gonna get light all over the edges of your film, and it'll ruin your shots for the day. All right, and there's times where this camera will kind of fool you into thinking maybe there's something wrong with it, but you just get familiar with it. I'll show you one little thing here. If you actually take the battery out of it, and or let's say the battery was dead, more likely scenario. All right, so you've got a dead battery, and you release the shutter. The shutter's going to stay locked up until you press the battery check button. So you see these dots right here on the magnifier. This is for the waist level viewfinder. There's two dots here. What you do is you rotate the dot on the magnifier lens itself to meet this dot, and that'll allow you to remove the magnifier lens. And why would you want to do that? Is so you can actually put a different magnifier in here that will match your eyeglass prescription. So that's kind of a neat feature. It's like I said, this camera is really well thought out, and I don't think I've seen that on any other waist level camera. I could be wrong about that, but I found that kind of noteworthy. There's a little coupling lever right here. This is what communicates your f-stop, your aperture opening, through this deal right here. Okay, this couples up with that little pin, and make sure that when you attach the lens, that the two meet, and they generally do. I think I've had one time where they didn't quite line up, but you see how the lens is now turning that little pin back and forth. That's communicating your f-stop to this metered finder right here. It's kind of like pretty much exactly like the Nikon system on their AI lenses. I think that's where they first came out. All right. One thing that's kind of cool on this camera here, if you see the tripod socket there, you can actually, it's a 1/4 inch tripod socket that can be converted to a 3/8 inch socket. Okay, first there's in the base of this socket, there's a small screw in there. Okay, that will, once you unscrew it and then you use a coin to remove the the 1/4 inch socket, it'll then become a 3/8 inch socket. Okay, just turn it counterclockwise with a coin, and then it's ready to go. The eye cup actually has a ring in here that that can hold in a diopter lens for your eyeglass subscription. So you can unscrew the ring, insert the your diopter ring, and then this little metal ring holds it in place. Okay, and so while I mentioned earlier that one of the advantages of like a camera like Hasselblad versus the Mamiya, the 645 1000S, is that the backs on the Hasselblad are self-contained, and you can load them up and have them standing by with a roll of film, and you can actually change mid-roll, with the dark slide. This particular camera kind of gives you most of that capability. It doesn't let you change your back mid-roll, but it does let you have other backs standing by, and I'll show you that before I load up this camera here. Okay, so this little box here contains another film, another film insert. That's what these guys are called, inserts. And it's really handy. They come with a box. You can load up your film here, and the advantage here is that you've got another roll ready to go. It's not really about changing mid-roll, because you can't do that, but you at least have another roll standing by. So you got one in the camera, one here. Now you got a quick 30 frames you can take and reload, and you can keep on going. All right, so I've got here some of my fave in terms of film, a little T-Max. All right, so we're gonna try this out, and if we're doing things right, we're gonna take the back off of this. I'm sorry, the end flap off of the T-Max, and insert it in here. Actually, it inserts from the bottom. I forgot. It's got a little pressure plate, but inserts from the bottom. All right, and to open it up, you just press in on the T-Max and then slide the switch to the side, and you're ready to go. Okay. All right, so they should look like this when you're ready to start loading them. Okay, so you've got your unexposed film on this side. You've got your take-up spool over here, right? So what you do is you start unwinding the film, and don't worry, this is actually just paper. And you see, this is the film plate that holds the film nice and flat up against the shutter curtain. So you start rolling it. All right, when you get the arrows like this, then you're ready to go. From that point, you just insert it back into the camera, and it'll click pretty positively. All right, so you just start advancing the film, and the film will stop advancing when it's ready for the first frame. So at this point, the frame counter is at 1, and your film is properly wound to the correct starting point. All right, so yeah, that's it. And I could have just as simply loaded that reel as far as I did, just where the arrow was showing across the paper on the film, and then put it in my little box here. And I'll probably do that as well. I'll probably load up a second roll of T-Max and then just put it in this second cartridge. That way, when I go out, I'm ready to go. I don't have to worry about fumbling around with the film while I'm out in the field, and it's good to go. Yeah, so I just thought I would point that out, because I hear a lot of people when they review this camera, or when they're just talking about the camera, there's you can't change film types mid roll, which is true, but that's not I don't know a lot of people that do that anyway, especially considering there's only 15 photos, so I don't know how crucial it is to change photos mid-roll, but you do have a partial capability that you see in the Hasselblad, that where you can have that second roll ready to go. It's just not inside its own film back. It's just inside this box here, but it's loaded up and it's ready to go. Okay. All right, guys. So, like I said, I really enjoy using this camera. I'm going to show some photos that I took with it on a photo walk. It's I was really, really pleasantly surprised by this camera. I've kind of shied away from these because they're kind of big, but I found it really easy to hold. I mean, it was really convenient. I just kind of slung it over a shoulder, you know, and it hangs down, as you can see, with the, you know, with his neck strap. Using the SLR viewfinder was fine. It was, you know, just like using an SLR camera. It would be better with the grip, but the grip would add so much more mass to the camera. I just don't really think I'll ever get one because it really does make it a much bigger camera. I don't know. I might try one out and see if I get used to it. Of them. And I'll tell you about my little adventure with this particular one. When I got this camera, I'm kind of particular. You know, it had some dust on it, and it was bugging me, so I wanted to remove the dust. And I got the dust off of there, but I noticed like some what looked like watermarks. So I tried to get that off, and then I ended up removing the focusing screen to get the watermarks completely off, and they weren't coming off, and I couldn't understand why. So I said, I'm just going to soak the whole thing. Don't recommend this, by the way. But I just soaked the whole, you know, like I was washing a dish or something. And then it got more watermarks in there, and I really didn't know what was going on. So I looked closer, and I found out that this focusing screen is kind of a sandwich. There's at least two layers to it, and the water was getting in between the layers. So I figured that out, and, you know, got it nice and dry, and actually it came out cleaner than when I started. But I came very close to having to replace this if I hadn't have figured it out. So from now on, I'm just going to leave the focusing screen alone. But I thought that was kind of funny. It took the better part of an hour to figure out what was going on, and it was kind of a frustrating exercise. But anyway, this is my preferred configuration. I just like it like this. It doesn't bother me at all that there's no meter. But again, there's times when the prism finder is you know, perfect to have. But again, I really like using it like this, and it seems like the viewfinder looks bigger when you use the waist level finder than it does through the prism. Not much bigger, but it's, you know, it's noticeably bigger. And again, the shutter release knob, or the shutter release button right there up top, is just perfect positioning. And this is my preferred way to use it by far. And it makes it a little lighter camera, less bulky, you know, especially when it's folded down, out of the way. You just squeeze that together, fold it out of the way, and you see it makes it a much smaller configuration. So, all right, guys. So this is the Mamiya M645 1000S. That's a long name for a great camera. It's the poor man's Hasselblad. I enjoy it. Excellent optics, super sharp pictures out of this camera. Great handling, great build quality. Highly, highly recommend that you consider it before you go spend all that money on a Hasselblad. Thanks, guys.